Shalom Israel, Brother Reggie Jr. here. So today, guys, I'm going to be doing Genesis chapter 30, just picking up where I left off from last time. And as you guys remember, in the previous chapter, in chapter 29, we learned that Jacob loved and favored Rachel, but God loved and favored Leah. And we know that God's love and favor will always take you way further than man's love and favor, because God's love and favor makes all the difference in the world. So we're going to go ahead and get into this, guys. Genesis chapter 30, and I'm going to go ahead and read verses 1 through 13. And it says, "And when Rachel saw that she bare Jacob no children," because remember, she was barren, but who made her barren though? Not herself. God made her barren. It says that when she saw that she bare no children, and remember, Leah bare children to Jacob, and that was Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. So she bared all the quote-unquote heavy-hitting tribes. But Rachel, as of yet, has absolutely no children. And guess what it said? It says Rachel envied her sister. So the golden child is now envious of her lesser sister, Leah. But how do you think Leah felt all them years under Rachel? Even though Leah was older, she was the oldest, it tells you that, Rachel was beautiful and she was favored. So how do you think, Leah had felt all that time? And it says, Rachel envied her sister and said unto Jacob, "Give me children, or else I die." But it ain't got nothing to do with Jacob. That's why verse 2. "And Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel. And he said, Am I in God's stead, who have withheld from thee the fruit of the womb?" Jacob like, "Listen, Rachel, it ain't got nothing to do with me. You already know this is all the Lord is doing." So once again, we see that Jacob had understanding. He understood that when certain things happen, like a woman being barren or a man being sterile, we all know he knew that that had everything to do with the Most High and not himself, not man. Okay, verse 3, and it says, "And she said, Behold, my maid Bilhah," because remember, Laban, her father, gave her that maid. So she's going to use this same maid, Bilhah. Rachel tells Jacob, "Go in unto her, and she shall bear upon my knees, that I may also have children by her." And once again, guys, let's just like we seen with Sarah, we see that surrogacy is nothing new. Like today, you have surrogate mothers. Well, they been had doing that in the ancient times. Been had surrogate mothers, and that's pretty much what Rachel is doing here through her maid Bilhah. Verse 4, "And she gave him Bilhah, her handmaid, to wife." So Rachel was the one that gave it. It wasn't that Jacob picked her, but Rachel gave Jacob her maid to what? To wife. "And Jacob went in unto her." All right. And it says this, verse 5, "And Bilhah conceived and bare Jacob a son. And Rachel said, God have judged me, and have also heard my voice, and have given me a son. Therefore she called his name Dan." Verse 7, and it says, "Bilhah, Rachel's maid, conceived again, and bare Jacob a second son. And Rachel said, With great wrestling have I wrestled with my sister, and I have prevailed." In her own eyes, she has prevailed, but she technically hasn't, because she still hasn't had any children. Surrogacy means nothing. "And she called his name Naphtali." So, wow. So essentially, you had to watch. Think about how Rachel feels. You have to watch two women bear children by your husband, who the husband didn't even love them, but loved her, but yet she couldn't give her husband no children. And as you guys know, back in those times, not like today, but back in those times, it was a shame not to bear your husband any children. So far, Bilhah has bared Dan and Naphtali on behalf of Rachel. Okay, but we know Leah, she bare Reuben, Simeon, Judah, Levi. So you know if you're of the children of Reuben, you know if you're of the children of Simeon, Judah, and Levi, your mother is not Rachel. Again, your mother is absolutely in no way Rachel. Your mother is Leah. I know for us here in America, there's a good chance we're of the house of Judah, which contains Benjamin, Levi, and Judah. So if you are of Judah and Levi, excluding Benjamin, you know that your mother is Leah. Okay, and then Bilhah, she bare the Danites and the Naphtalites. So Dan and Naphtali. So if you're of Dan and of Naphtali, your mother is Bilhah, which was the maid of Rachel. And I believe in Africa, there was a sect of Africans that said they knew that they were the Danites because it had been passed down to them. So that means their mother would be Bilhah. Even though Bilhah was being used as a surrogate by Rachel, their mother, physical mother, would be Bilhah. All right. But guys, let's go ahead and keep going. Verse 9, and it says, when Leah saw that she had left barren, she took Zilpah, her maid, and gave her Jacob to wife. So pretty much when Leah couldn't have any more children, or at least was done having children, she took her maid. So it's kind of weird. It's almost like Leah and Rachel are in some kind of a competition to kind of win Jacob's love. 9, it says, when Leah saw that she had left barren, she took Zilpah, her maid. Once again, her father Laban also gave her that maid. And it says, and gave her Jacob to wife. Once again, Jacob did not choose Zilpah to wife, but Leah, just like Rachel, gave her to Jacob to wife. Verse 10, and it says, and Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Jacob a son. Now, who did she bear? Verse 11, and Leah said, a troop cometh, and she called his name Gad. So basically, Zilpah was Leah's surrogate, but nevertheless, those are still Zilpah's children. And Bilhah, she had Dan and Naphtali, those are still her children. So Zilpah ended up having Gad, so the Gadites. Verse 12, and Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Jacob a second son. Think about it. So now that is, like, I had to do some quick math, but that is 3 women that Rachel had to watch have children by Jacob, and she herself, who Jacob loved, she could give her husband no children. Boy, I know there was some shame there for sure, because that was a shame, like I said, back in those times, not to be able to bear your husband children. But let's see who this second son is. Verse 13, and Leah said, happy am I, for the daughters will call me blessed. Once again, they're in that competition. And she called his name what? Asher. So Zilpah, the maid of Leah, had Gad and Asher. So if you're a Gadite or if you are of Asher, you know that your mother is Zilpah. Yeah, she was a surrogate to Leah, but nevertheless, your physical mother is Zilpah, the maid of Leah. Now, I'm going to go ahead, guys, and read verses 14 through 21. So keep in mind, at this point, these 3 women, they had children, but Rachel's the only one. She's still barren. Man. And I tell you, boy, that's rough right there. So pretty much all of the tribes of Israel are just about here. And Rachel still ain't had no children. But we're going to see who she's going to end up bearing. Verse 14. It says, and Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest. Now, Reuben at this time is a very, very young man, and found mandrakes in the field and brought them unto his mother Leah. So he picked some mandrakes, and I'm going to tell you what those mandrakes are. And it says, and brought them unto his mother Leah. Remember, guys, Reuben's mother was Leah, not Rachel. Okay. Then Rachel said to Leah, give me, I pray thee, of thy son's mandrakes. Now there's a reason why Rachel wanted these mandrakes. Verse 15, and she said unto her, is it a small matter. This is Leah talking. And she said unto her, is it a small matter that thou hast taken my husband? And wouldest thou take away my son's mandrakes also? Because it's pretty safe to say that after Leah left off from bearing children for Jacob ended up going back, or giving all his attention back to Rachel. Okay, so that's why Leah said what she said in terms that, you taking my husband, because all of the attention ended up turning back to Rachel once she stopped having those children. So Rachel right now wants those mandrakes. And Rachel said, therefore he, meaning Jacob, therefore he shall lie with thee tonight for thy son's mandrakes. Meaning, okay, I will give you, basically Rachel's doing a barter. She's like, okay, I'll give you my husband. I will give you my husband Jacob in return for your son's mandrakes. Verse 16, and it says, and Jacob came out of the field in the evening, and Leah went out to meet him and said, thou must come in unto me, for surely I have hired thee with my son's mandrakes. And he lay with her that night. Okay, now before I keep on reading, why did Rachel want these mandrakes? Well, I did some research, guys, and I found out that mandrakes is a type of flower that naturally enhances fertility in women. I was like, whoa, I was like, that's what mandrakes do? So truly, man, the Lord meant what he said when he said, listen, I put the healing in the herbs, because the Lord did. He put the medicine in the healing in this greenery around us in these herbs. So, man, that is crazy. It's like the Lord has something for everything. It's like he has something, some kind of herb or medicine for every sickness and, illness that you had. And so for fertility, we know that mandrakes work for women in terms of fertility. I don't even know if that flower is still around, but I just know that that flower existed back in those times, and that helped with fertility among women. So they didn't go to the hospital. They didn't shoot the woman up with some syringe with something in it to help her fertility. There was a flower that they had called a mandrake that enhanced fertility among women. So I found that interesting. So truly the Lord did put medicine in these herbs, just like he said. But anyway, let's go ahead and go back. So Jacob ended up lying with Leah because the exchange of the mandrakes happened. So guess what? Verse 17. It says, and God hearkened unto Leah, and what she conceived. Oh Lord. So Leah conceived again. I can only imagine, boy, how Rachel feel. And it says, and bare Jacob the fifth son. And it says, and Leah said, God have given me my hire, because I have given my maiden to my husband. And she called his name Issachar. Wow. So she even bare Issachar. So if you're Issachar, your mother is not Rachel. Your mother is Leah. Verse 19. And Leah conceived again. Wow, man, I can only just imagine. I'm serious, y'all. I can only imagine Rachel's mindset is probably broken. So she conceived again and bare Jacob a sixth son. At this time, guys, basically all the 12 tribes are pretty much almost all here. Who is that sixth son? Well, we're going to see verse 20. And Leah said, God have endued me with a good dowry. Now will my husband dwell with me. Okay, give me attention and focus on me, because I have borne him what? 6 sons. And she called his name Zebulun. Oh, wow. So now you guys know. If you are of the children of Zebulun, your mother is not Rachel. Your mother is Leah. Wow. 21, and it says, and afterward she bare a daughter. So she bare another child, and called her name Dinah. And we know the 12 sons of Jacob did not play about they sister Dinah. They ain't play at all. But she ended up bearing Dinah. So pretty much all the 12 tribes basically almost here. But I'm going to show you something. This is why the God of Israel is good. Verse 22. And it says, God remembered Rachel. Because remember, God did all of this not because it was Rachel's fault, but he did this because Jacob, it said that when God seen that Leah was hated, seen that she was despised, that's why the Lord ended up doing what he did concerning Leah in contrast to Rachel. But nevertheless, Rachel is still God's daughter. God loves his daughter Rachel, and he had compassion and he had mercy on his daughter. And what did he do for his daughter Rachel? And God hearkened to her and opened her womb. And guess what? 23. And she conceived and bare a son and said, God have taken away my reproach. And God did something magnificent with Rachel. What was that thing that was magnificent? And she called his name. She called his name Joseph. And said, the Lord shall add to me another son. Wow. So the Lord ended up having mercy on his daughter Rachel and opened up her womb, and she ended up bearing Joseph. And you know who Joseph ended up having, and we're going to go through that. But let's go ahead real quick, guys, and let's go to 145 and Psalms 145, and I'm going to read verses 8 and 9, and it says, the Lord is gracious. So he probably seen the lowness of mind of Rachel. And I guarantee you, after all of those experiences that Rachel experienced concerning those women bearing Jacob them children and seeing your sister pretty much getting everything, because it told you that Rachel ended up envying her sister Leah. And so with the things Rachel went through, it probably garnered humility in her, because prior to that, let's be honest, Rachel probably wasn't as humble as she was after the fact. Okay. But I think once she reached a state of lowness in her mind, that's when the Lord began to come through for Rachel. And it says the Lord is gracious and full of compassion. That was compassion, because the Lord could have just left Rachel completely barren and just say, I'll let the last tribe of Joseph go to one of those handmaids. But he didn't. He allowed Rachel to have Joseph. And it says he's slow to anger and of what? Of great mercy. That was great mercy that he showed Rachel. And it says the Lord is good to all, and he sure is. And his tender mercies are all over his works. Because you may be saying, well, she only had one son. She only had Joseph. But you're going to see that of all the tribes, Joseph was the mightiest one. And you're going to see that. We're going to see. But let's go ahead and go to 1 Samuel 1 real quick. Because I was telling you guys how it was a shame for a woman not to bear her children, bear her husband children. So let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 1. And I'm going to read verses 4 through 6. And it says, and when the time... Let me see. Now, this is concerning Samuel's birth. So we're looking at Samuel's mother, Hannah. It says, and when the time was, the Elkanah offered, he gave to Peninnah his wife, and to all her sons and her daughters portions. But unto Hannah he gave a worthy portion, for he loved Hannah. But the Lord had shut up her womb. Okay, now was that it, or was there more? Verse 6. And her adversary also provoked her sore. This is the verse I wanted. For to make her fret, because the Lord had shut up her womb. So, Hannah, which was Samuel's mother, she had, adversaries among the other women that poked fun at her, laughed at her and stuff. Why? Because she was barren. And again, that was a testament to the fact that that was a curse for a woman to be barren and to not bear any children to her husband. But nevertheless, we know that Hannah prayed, and the Lord ended up opening her womb, and she ended up bearing the mighty Samuel. Now, let's go ahead and go to Luke 1. Luke chapter 1. I'm all the way in Mark. Okay, here we go. Luke chapter 1, and I'm going to read verses 24 and 25. And it says, so now we're dealing with the one we call John the Baptist, who, never forget, guys, John the Baptist was of the sons of Aaron. He was the priest. He was a priest, okay? But nevertheless, 24-25, it says, and after those days his wife Elizabeth conceived, which was John's mother, and hid herself 5 months, saying, thus hath the Lord dealt with me in the days wherein he looked upon me, to take away what? My reproach among men, meaning actually the women. Because why? I mean, and she was also poked fun at, and she was also mocked. Why? Because she was barren. And that was like a curse for a woman. And again, that was a curse to not be able to bear children to your husband. But nevertheless, the Lord, he seen Elizabeth too, and ended up bearing the forerunner known as John the Baptist, who was the greatest of all. The Lord said there was none like John the Baptist. But anyway, let's go ahead and go to Genesis 48, because in Genesis 48, it tells us about Joseph. Because remember, the Lord blessed Rachel with only one son in Joseph. And that may not seem all that great to you guys, but we're going to see that actually was a great, great, great blessing. So let's go ahead and go to Genesis 48. And I'm going to read verses 16 through 19. And it says, the angel which redeemed me from all evil, bless the lads, and let my name be named on them, and the name of my fathers, Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. So this is Jacob talking. 17, and when Joseph, oh, there goes Joseph, the son of Rachel, so you know, if you are of, I'm just going to go ahead and say it, if you are of Ephraim and Manasseh, your mother is not Leah. Your mother is Rachel. When Joseph saw that his father had laid his right hand upon the head of what? Ephraim, because Ephraim was the youngest son, it displeased him. And he held up his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head unto Manasseh's head. And Joseph said unto his father, not so, my father, for this is the firstborn. Put thy right hand upon his head, because the blessing is supposed to naturally go to the firstborn. But what happened in 19? His father refused and said, so Jacob, he looked in his son Joseph's eyes, and he said, I know it, my son, I know it. And he also shall become a people. He also shall be great. Talk about Manasseh. So Manasseh would be a monstrous, mighty people. Okay, a great people. But truly his younger brother, talking about Ephraim, shall be greater than he. So Ephraim shall be even more monstrous, even more mightier than Manasseh. It says, and his seed shall become a multitude of nations, those same nations in the New Testament. He said, Ephraim gonna become a multitude of nations. So basically, for all of Rachel's pain and suffering that she endured, God blessed her with Joseph, who would bear Ephraim and Manasseh, who would be the largest tribes out of all of the tribes of Israel. They would be the most mightiest and the most numerous of all the tribes of Israel. So that was God's way of compensating Rachel for all her heartache and all her pain. So we see that, yes, God did love his daughter Rachel. And because of that, he blessed her. Even though she had one son, blessed her with the two most mightiest tribes of all of the tribes of Israel, the most numerous. Now, was that it? Yep, that was it for that. Okay, so the Lord compensated Rachel with Ephraim and Manasseh. So let's go ahead and go back to Genesis 30, guys. And I'm going to go ahead and read verses 25 through 30. And it says, and it came to pass, when Rachel had borne Joseph, that Jacob said unto Laban, send me away, that I may go unto my own place and to my country. Remember in chapter 29, I was telling you guys that Laban gave Rachel Leah after he worked those 7 years first, not just because of the custom, but it was because of something else. Well, we're going to go ahead and see what that something else was for. There was a reason why Laban had done that. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you. It was because Laban seen that the Lord was with Jacob, in that he blessed Jacob in all things, and even blessed him, even blessed Laban for Jacob's sake. But let's keep reading, guys, so we can feel this thing out. So basically, Jacob was ready to go, ready to take his family and ready to live his life. 26. He said, give me my wives and my children, for whom I have served thee. Because remember, he ended up serving a total of 14 years basically for Rachel, because he never wanted Leah, but he ended up getting Leah and ended up serving another 7 years for Rachel. So he ended up serving 14 years. So he said, give me my wives and my children who I have served thee, and let me go, for thou knowest thy service which I have done thee. And Laban, verse 27, and Laban said unto him, I pray thee, if I have found favor in thine eyes, tarry, for I have learned by what experience that the Lord have blessed me for thy sake. Did you guys not know that the only favor that America has in these other nations, the only favor that your family has, the only favor that your job has, is the fact that you're there? God will bless your environment and the people around you just for your sake. And I know some of y'all saints have experienced that, but just for your sake, God will bless the environment. He will bless people around you for you. Sometimes he won't even destroy a place or judge a place for your sake, because he don't want you in the crosshairs. Let's go ahead real quick and take a look at that in Genesis 19, because that was something we learned there. Genesis 19 through 22. It says, now this is concerning Lot, okay, having to escape Sodom and Gomorrah. It says, behold now thy servant hath found grace in thy sight, and thou hast magnified thy mercy, which thou hast shewed unto me in saving my life. And I cannot escape to the mountain, lest some evil take me there. Lest some evil take me and I die. 20. Behold now, this city is near to flee unto, to Mount Zoar, and it is a little one. Oh, let me escape thither. Is it not a little one? And my soul shall live. 21. And he said unto him, see, I have accepted thee concerning this thing. That angel. I have accepted thee concerning this thing also, Lot. Okay, so I'm going to let you go ahead and run into Zoar, since you don't want to flee to the mountains. Guess what this angel said on behalf of God? That I will not overthrow this city for the which thou hast spoken. Haste thee, escape thither, for I cannot do anything till thou be come thither. Therefore the name of the city was called Zoar. So we see that the only reason certain places have favor is because the saints are present. And never, brothers and sisters, never underestimate that, and never forget that. Never. Now, let's go ahead and go back to Genesis chapter 30. I got to figure out where I was. Genesis chapter, let me see, chapter 30. Okay, where the heck was I? Pass through. Okay. Oh, I was on 25. Sorry, y'all. I had a little blank mind for a second. Verse 27. And it says, and Laban, 28. And he said, appoint me thy wages, and I will give it. And he said unto him, thou knowest I have served thee, and how thy cattle was with me. For it was little which thou hadst before I came, and it is now increased into a multitude. And the Lord have blessed thee since my coming. And now, when shall I provide for my own house also? So Jacob is looking for a little bit of payment, and he's basically saying, hey, Laban, you ain't have hardly nothing, but when I came, the Lord blessed you for my sake, and now you got a multitude of cattle and stuff. And that let you know the Lord was with Jacob and not Laban. 31, you will understand later why the Lord wasn't with Laban. 31, and it says, and he said, what shall I give thee? And Jacob said, thou shalt not give me anything. If thou wilt do this thing for me, I will again feed and keep thy flock. 32, I will pass through all thy flock today, removing from thence all the speckled and spotted cattle. So those were the not so good cattle among Laban's flock, and all the brown cattle among the sheep, and the spotted and speckled among the goats. And of such shall be my hire. 33. So shall my righteousness answer for me in time to come, when it shall come for my hire before thy face. Everyone that is not speckled and spotted among the goats, and is brown among the sheep, shall be counted stolen with me. So he pretty much gave Laban his word that, listen, I ain't gonna touch none of the good of your cattle and of your sheep and goats. 34. And Laban said, behold, I would it might be according to thy word. So he said, okay, Jacob, do as you say. 35. And he removed that day the he goats that were ring straight, meaning striped and spotted, and all the she goats that were speckled and spotted, and everyone that had some white in it, and all the brown among the sheep, and gave them into the hands of his sons. And he set 3 days journey between himself and Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flocks. Excuse me, y'all, a little tired. 37. And Jacob took him rods of green poplar, and of the hazel and chestnut tree, and peeled white strakes in them, and made the white appear which was in the rods. And he set the rods which he had peeled before the flocks in the gutters and the watering troughs when the flocks came to drink, that they should conceive when they came to drink. And the flocks conceived before the rods, and brought forth cattle, ring straight, meaning striped, speckled, and spotted. And Jacob did separate the lambs, and set the faces of the flocks toward the ring straight, and all the brown in the flock of Laban, and he put his own flocks by themselves, and put them not into Laban's cattle. And it came to pass that whensoever the stronger cattle did conceive, that Jacob laid the rods before the eyes of the cattle in the gutters, that they might conceive among the rods. But when the cattle were feeble, he put them not in. So the feebler were Laban's, and the stronger Jacob's. And the man increased, and the man increased exceedingly. So you could clearly see, boy, man, the Lord was with Jacob, and had much cattle, and manservants, and camels, and asses. And that's the end of that, y'all. But that's what happened when you serve the Most High. He'll take that little bit that you have and just magnify, explode it. Even on your job, you will have more money than your supervisor, the manager, the CEO. When you follow God, he will make sure that you ain't begging bread. He will make sure that you have more than plenty. But remember, that is not the blessing. The blessing is in God. That other stuff is just extra. So it always, and that's a perfect example. It don't matter who man favors. It matters who God favors, because that will, depending on who God favors, that determines how successful you're going to be in life. And the Lord's favor and love will always take you further than man's favor. You better believe that. So that is pretty much it for that, guys. I will see you in Genesis chapter 31. And with that, guys, shalom.